Welcome, Nadia. We are
Thanks, Amy.
we're happy to have you here on Writers Who Care. We can't wait to talk about powerful writing pedagogy with you. Before we start, I was hoping you could introduce yourself, let us know where you are, what department you're in, and so on.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Amy. I really appreciate the invitation. So I'm Nadia Bahizadeh, and I'm at Georgia State University in the Department of Middle and Secondary Education. I'm also a co-director for the Center for Equity and Justice in Teacher Education at Georgia State. Um, and one more affiliation, part of the K-16 Teach Truth Coalition in Georgia.
Nice. And you used to be a middle school teacher, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. I taught out in Oakland for a number of years, taught middle school.
Nice. Thank you. So we're just going to get right into it. And I wanted to start just by asking you to tell us a little bit about powerful writing pedagogy. What is it and why should we care about it?
Sure. Um, so first, I wanted to start potentially many powerful writing pedagogies, plural. And I talk about that a little bit in a paper I wrote on powerful writing pedagogy from 2019. Um, so there are different people might draw on different theories, bring different approaches together. So I define a powerful writing pedagogy as an approach to writing instruction that centers criticality while also embracing all the varied approaches for writing that are necessary. So we bringing in skills, creativity, process, social practices, and also sociopolitical aspects of writing. So that's the definition of a powerful writing pedagogy. And I've developed one specifically for adolescents. And to do that, I drew upon for the criticality aspect, I use Ernest Morel's work on critical composition pedagogy. And then for the authentic work, that I bring in this theory of authenticity that I derived from my own research. And then the third part that I bring in are the skills and strategies from Steve Graham and colleagues, What Works Clearinghouse report on best practices, evidence-based practices for writing.
Nice. Thank you. And we're going to dig into some of those tenets here in just a little while. So, why did you decide to develop this particular framework? Why do you think the world needed it?
Yeah, so I've always been interested since the time I was a middle school teacher. I've been very interested in authentic writing. How do we make writing experiences real for students? It always seemed to me that it was a missed opportunity if students were writing just for the teacher, just to demonstrate proficiency. And so I came into my doctoral program years ago, really focused on authenticity. And then when I collaborated with a wonderful local teacher here in Atlanta. And her emphasis was, and the school's emphasis was, how do we increase test scores? And I understood that. And we collaborated to try to blend authentic and effective approaches to writing instruction. And it worked really well. The test scores went up. So it was a success. Um, However, it just felt like something was missing. And in my research, students were asking for kind of more personal relevance, more global relevance. And so over time, I realized that that socio-political aspect was missing. And so I started thinking, how do I pull together effective, authentic, and critical approaches so that teachers can draw upon this framework and think about how to attend to all of these really important elements of writing instruction.
Yeah, that's super important, and it's cool that you got to work with a teacher that was working in a school and really illustrate how you can use this framework in the reality of schools. So, you can navigate getting good test scores, which is what we have to care about, in school, by also opening opportunities for students to be able to write about what they want to write about, what's important to them. I'm wondering, as I was listening to you talk a little bit about authentic writing, I'm wondering if the people who are listening might have questions about, what that is. You, of course, give a great, great definitions and explanations in the articles that you've written. I'm wondering, if you might explain that a little bit so that people will understand what you mean when you say that.
Sure. So for a piece of writing to be authentic, it needs to have a purpose and audience that's meaningful to the writer. Um, and so it's subjective. It's really difficult to predetermine authentic writing for your students. So that you have to know your students well, and ideally you solicit what are your interests, what do you care about in the world, what would be a valued topic for you to write on, and to whom do you need to deliver this composition so that you can have an actual impact on that audience. So that's part of it. So part of authentic writing is this like choice of a valued topic. Another aspect is centering expression and embedding conventions within expression. And we know this from research that if you teach conventions in grammar and isolation, students don't learn it. But if they see how it can help them say what they want to say, have the impact that they want to have, that is how they can really deeply learn those conventions and use them and also subvert them if necessary. Um, and then the other two pieces of this theory I draw upon for my own research is sharing writing with others. So being able to share in process and final pieces with just like a lot of different people and get feedback. And then the final piece is that like global, personal, local relevance. So these topics not only are valued for the individual, but have some connection to the world around them.
Nice, nice. Thank you for further explaining that. So you've written about this. So I think people are going to want to know, like, where have you written about this? Where can they read about this? Can you describe some of the things that you've written?
Sure. So the 2019 piece is in Pedagogies, and that's a more scholarly work. So the audience for that piece might be more researchers, teacher educators, although I do hope teachers who are interested in kind of delving into the theory and research behind it would read it and be able to implement that in their classroom. However, to really make sure that this theory was more accessible to teachers, I have a recent piece in English Journal that just came out, and that provides just a less theoretical version of the other article, but still has all the piece. What is powerful writing pedagogy? What's the theory behind it? And also an illustration of how teachers might use it in their classroom based on my experience and my experience working with teachers.
Nice, thank you. And I've read both of them, and I agree with you. I think the pedagogies piece, even though it is more theoretical, it can really provide a justification for teachers who know that this kind of writing is important, especially in a world where this kind of teaching of writing may not be seen as valued or helping test scores or whatever. And so I feel like if they can read that and put that together, it's a great explanation for why it's so important to administration or whoever might be questioning them for sure. And then the English Journal is like, okay, how do we do this? It's a great, how do we actually put this into praxis? So are you,
Exactly.
are you going to write anything else? Is this like something you're going to keep writing about and doing research on or?
Oh, definitely. So I teach English methods courses at Georgia State, and I use this framework to create the syllabus and the experiences for my pre-service teachers. And so I'm always interested in the extent to which they're able to take up these ideas and put them into practice during student teaching and beyond. And my more recent research has really looked at that. Like, are my pre-service teachers who become in-service teachers able to enact these elements of powerful writing pedagogy? And I have found that the critical component is very challenging to enact. I'm working in Atlanta, I'm in Georgia. Currently we have some legislation that is against so-called divisive concepts. And so, especially right now, it's even more challenging for teachers, especially new teachers, to enact these critical pieces of teaching. So, I'm going to continue working with teachers and studying, well, what supports can we offer those of us who are in the university or in other teacher development and support spaces, what can we do to really help teachers enact powerful writing pedagogies in their classrooms? Um, and I will be presenting at NCTE
Right.
to teachers on this, and I'm hoping I would love to kind of create a group or some sort of collaborative where teachers can share strategies, share lesson plans and unit plans. And maybe this is where I insert a shameless
Yeah.
plug for the very basic website I just created. And maybe we can include it on the website. And I've been trying to put some of the resources like the articles and also some lesson plans so that teachers can access those lesson plans and use them.
Nice. So the presentation at NCTE, is it pre-service teachers that are coming with you or currently practicing teachers?
Well, this presentation, I will not be accompanied by
Okay.
teachers, but I do hope in the future that is a goal that I can bring with me some of my collaborators and they can share of what this looks like in practice.
Nice, nice. All right, thank you. So I'm wondering at this point if this is a good time for you to kind of let's dig into the tenets of powerful writing pedagogies. If you would, maybe you could just briefly kind of describe those five tenets for us, so that we can get a sense of what does all of this entail.
Sure. Um, so at the heart of the powerful writing pedagogy for adolescents that I developed is the product. So what is it that students are producing? So the very first tenet is around students producing, distributing, and then reflecting on multimodal compositions that are attempting to do something, to have that impact on an audience, and that action is valued by the student. The second tenet is about engagement and relevance. So it focuses more on the process. So that this is where a lot of those authentic elements come in. So students are guided to choose a valued topic for reading and writing, write for real purposes, real audiences. And one of the evidence-based practices that I link with this process is teachers helping students set goals and monitor progress towards those goals. Then the third tenet is about community and dialogue. So creating in your classroom, and there are lots of researchers and teacher educators who emphasize the importance of community, but there ideally it expands beyond the classroom walls and brings in community members and family members, and everyone is participating in reading and thinking with the students about their compositions. um, and then part of that, like through this community that you've developed, you can also embed the evidence-based practice of receiving feedback from multiple groups, peer feedback, teacher feedback, a lot of formative feedback along the way to arriving at that final product. The fourth tenet focuses on skills. So this is often a tension in the research, but also I see it with my pre-service teachers. The classic I do, we do, you do kind of approach to instruction, it has its place. And I do think there are many lessons where it makes sense for a teacher to model, have the students practice, and then have them engage individually with the strategy or skill that you think, again, will help them enact, do what they want to do with their writing. Um, the problem comes and the tension comes in where that's all the teacher does. It's all about explicit direct instruction. So the way I talk about this fourth tenet is you do include skills and structures for writing, but it's in many lessons and it is always in the service of expression. And then the last tenet, the fifth tenet, is about multimodality, reading and writing across varied text, genres, media. And it also that brings together reading and writing. So students are using the text that they've read as mentor text for their own writing, and then also as evidence to support any claims that they're making.
Nice, thank you. That's really helpful. I'm looking, at the article here that outlines them, but I think your explanation adds even more helpful information to understand what those tenets are. So my next question is maybe we can, I think it would probably take too long to hone in on every single one of them, but maybe pick one where you can dig deeper into it and then kind of maybe take us through like what would it look like in a classroom if you're really putting it into practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll talk about the first one then, like, because, starting with the end in mind when you're developing a unit, a literacy unit is really important. So, kind of thinking about the product. And of course, these tenets are all interrelated. So, while you're thinking about product, you're considering the process and the community and the skills. But for example, there is a lesson plan right now that I posted on the PWP resources website that is around something that's happening in Atlanta. So I often encourage teachers to think about, well, what are your students talking about? What is, in the news right now? And this was collaboratively designed by me and some of my colleagues through the K-16 Teach Truth Coalition, and it's a lesson plan on Cop City in Atlanta. And if folks go to the website and review it, you'll see that it's standards based. It has like all the pieces of a lesson, the beginning, the middle, and the end. It has interactive structures. It has students reading and responding and engaging in different reading strategies. But the topic is really examining this proposal to take this large forested area in Atlanta and create a cop training facility. And so
Interesting.
there have been a lot of protests against this, and activists have been working, to change the use of this land. And so just presenting that to students and having them read, articles. The sample in the lesson plan that's posted is an article from a recent newspaper that's been rewritten for eighth grade students. So kind of
Nice.
just simplified language. And so that's an example of taking a topic that is of relevance to the students. And then in terms of product, so that's just the beginning. That's one lesson. In terms of product, you think about, you do a power analysis. So who could students write to with any opinion they have on the topic? Because obviously it is not our goal to indoctrinate students or tell them what to write about, but presenting them with a real world situation and different perspectives, and then inviting them to consider what should happen and how can you use writing to articulate that. In what mode do you want to select to do that? And then how are you going to deliver that, publish it? So that's one example of how to apply PWP.
I love that. And I love it, especially because I feel like teachers could sort of even just take that model of what you did, finding a current event in the area, making sure you find articles that are, accessible to the students that you're teaching, and then inviting them to write about it, to make change in their community or express their opinions or whatever about it. So no, I appreciate that very much. And we will definitely put a link to the website and also your articles and everything along with this interview when we post it on Writers Who Care. So everyone will have
Great.
access to that. I'm especially drawn. I mean, I'm drawn to all of the tenants, but I really love the one that's about community. And I agree. I think it's so important to invite others into the classroom to, have them talk about their writing and help, students revise their writing and think about who to write to, because I think it really helps our students understand that this is a career, this is a livelihood, or this is, it can make a difference, that people are doing this outside of the classroom. It's not just something that you're practicing doing to get a grade in the end. So
And it connects to my ideas about assessment. So I've done other research in writing assessment, and I think it's, the teacher has one perspective on good writing, and we all bring different life experiences when we read and interpret. And so it's a little tricky because often the teacher's assigning the grade, but if the teacher's able to share some of that responsibility and power with other students, parents, guardians, community members, and hear their take on writing, I really do find that, oftentimes someone else will see something of value in the writing and share it with the student in a way that is so encouraging to that student to have that feedback and to have it from different people, not just the teacher, um, can really help the student find their voice, refine what they want to say, and feel proud of their accomplishment and what they've written.
yeah, I agree. It can sometimes that can be overwhelming. I feel like for teachers at first, but I mean, I think once you do that year after year, then you find that those people want to come back because they want to be with the students in the classroom and provide feedback, and you build those relationships over time. Doesn't have to be in year one, right? uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you're at a school that has kind of a school-wide mission of community involvement, it can certainly be easier. When I taught out in Oakland at United for Success Academy, I'll give them a shout out. Um, we we all engaged in these expositions where students would present their work to the community, and
oh,
community
cool.
members and family members would come in,
Hmm.
read things, look at, science results, um, have some things that were more performative, and give feedback to the students. So that was school wide, and I was very lucky to be able to participate in that. And so I agree that for a new teacher, you might want to think about what's possible and then begin scaling up as you develop your
Yeah,
career.
yeah, nice. So what do you think PWP can do for like currently what is going on in schools? Like think about what we've been, going through with the pandemic. I mean, we're still going through that right now, trying to get back into the routine of going to school, and students are really trying to figure and teachers are trying to figure out how to deal with trauma, stress, just how to
Mm-hmm.
learn in these environments again. What can PWP offer for teachers right now who are dealing with that context?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I've always been a writer and I love writing. So I do bring that kind of bias to my work. Um, but I think that, for students who are struggling with pandemic related trauma or experiencing fear or oppression, related to racism, homophobia, ableism, xenophobia, any of these many oppressive forces that are in our society, PWP can provide them an opportunity to examine these issues, reflect on them with the support of their teachers and peers, and then produce texts that express how they feel or seek to influence others to take action in some way. So I think of it as like it's a very hopeful pedagogy. And
Hmm.
I think, and I've experienced this in my own life, being able to write and make sense of the world around you through writing is a really powerful tool for praxis, reflection, and then action. And so providing that space and time for students to, not just practice for the state test, but to really think about what is my reaction to this thing in the world. Maybe it's a painful thing, maybe it's a joyful thing, and be able to put that down and share it with other people. Small scale sharing in the classroom, and then also this broader sense of sharing, I think is really important.
Yeah, in some ways, it can be a way to heal some of those things that we're going through for sure. And I
Mm-hmm.
also like how this framework, I mean, yes, and sometimes that's all we need to do, right? Is just get it out there, maybe share it, and that is the end of it. And sometimes, like you were saying earlier, we really want to write to make a change. And I love that because it reminds students that they can be agents, right? That, yeah, these things are happening in our world right now, but we can make some change in these small ways. And you use writing oftentimes to make those changes, and giving them an opportunity to really think about how to do that and have support doing that is really powerful.
Mhm. Exactly.
So I'm curious, you just said that you've always been a writer and you love writing. So you've written a lot. It's not just these two articles that you talked about. You've got a lot of writing, under your belt. And so, what is, your writing process? Take us through that. You can talk about these two pieces or other pieces if you want to. Have you
Mhm.
discovered anything about yourself as a writer? Um, yeah.
I do well, I do write my academic articles, and I also write short stories. I have a novel just like sitting in the ether that needs to get out into the world. And I journal almost every day. So writing is part of just what I do on a daily basis. Um, in terms of the academic writing, I do think of it also as a way to reflect. And I don't want to write implications that I don't truly believe in or that I am not willing to enact myself. And so this work has been pushing me as this as I think about my pre-service teachers and what they're able to do and not able to do, and all the pressures that are affecting them right now in Georgia with the new legislation, and the pandemic related trauma that teachers and students are still dealing with. um, it really makes me think about what my responsibility is as someone at the university level, a teacher educator, to be engaged in schools and be engaged as an activist in trying to impact policy. So, some in the conclusions of some of my articles recently, I talk about teachers and teacher educators becoming involved with community organizations. And every time I advocate for that, I have to stop and think, am I really doing this work the level that is necessary?
Yeah.
Um, and I say that, and I also, it's important to rest. There's like so much that is needed to be done. Um, but part of plugging into an organization, or professional organization, even through NCTE or Elate, is you're not doing the work alone. So it's not all on you to do something. You're part of a collective, and that really increases the power of what's possible.
Nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Sometimes in academia, I feel like that too. We write a lot, but I don't. We are not always sure that our writing is making the changes that we wish would happen. So, what about any impact on your? Does writing, like writing these academic, pieces, or writing creatively, or in your journal or whatever, how does it impact how you teach in your classroom?
Um, yeah, it really profoundly impacts how I teach. Like I said, PWP is the framework for how I've organized my ELA methods class. I also, and I struggle with this, the issue of time in my teaching, because I do want my pre-service teachers who are going to be English teachers, I want them to write in the class, like really use writing in this way that I talk about. And then this is where, it's like, are you practicing what you preach? Do we really have time in the ELA methods course to achieve a level of praxis that kind of is at the level that I would, ideally want to have happen, while they're also developing lesson plans and unit plans. And um, so, yeah, I have often asked my pre-service ELA teachers to engage in the same sorts of writing that I hope they will ask their students to engage in, but in real ways. So, if we use Linda Christensen's Reading, Writing, and Rising Up text. And for example, when we talk about the gender narrative that she has in the book, I ask them to write their gender narratives and share them with one another through a read around. And again, not doing it just as an exercise, but doing it, like really talking about gender and the gender binary and how it is operated in our lives and how we have taken up that or resisted it.
Hmm.
Um,
So are your methods classes a semester, or do you have a year long, like do you have a advanced one, second semester or something?
yeah, we have two, well, actually, there's three literacy methods courses. And so one, I teach in the undergraduate program, the BSc in middle level education at Georgia State. And in their junior year, they take the first ELA methods class,
Hmm.
and then they take another ELA methods class in their senior year while they're student teaching.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah, they get that opportunity to have support kind of building skills and strategies and theories before student teaching, and then also kind of revisit those same skills, strategies, and theories while student
Cool.
teaching when everything's getting very real.
Yeah, and that changes their perspective for sure. Okay.
Right.
Nice. Well, is there anything else that you want us to know or that you want to share with us?
Um, I guess I'll just say in closing, prepping for this interview and thinking about powerful writing pedagogy, um, and also kind of connecting back to this idea of like being a teacher, educator, activist. I do want to acknowledge how increasingly difficult it might feel to do powerful writing pedagogy in the face of divisive concepts, legislation, or high CRT rhetoric. Um, and one resource that we have used at Georgia State, and we're trying to bring more of this into teacher preparation, is Micah Pollock's forms of backup. So
Hmm.
sharing with our teachers that there's all these different ways that you can find backup for doing the teaching that you believe is necessary for justice, whether it's stealth backup, just putting certain books on your classroom library shelf, or is it systems backup? And I really think system backup can be one of the most powerful forms because, again, it's about organizing, it's
Hmm.
joining a union, it's um, connecting with other teachers at NCTE and forming a group that you get together and you discuss like, okay, how do we do this, and really strategizing together. So I, there are a lot of obstacles right now to critical teaching and integrated approaches such as powerful writing pedagogy, but I do think that there is enough, like if we can come together and organize, we really can push against kind of the pressures that pull us towards skills based rote writing instruction.
Nice. Thank you. And hopefully, you can get a group together, at NCTE this year that can bring people together. And I'm sure it would grow year after year. I will also include that Pollock article too, with this interview because I agree. I think that is super important and can help other teachers who are dealing with some of these, the pushback that's going on in a lot of schools and contexts. So, all right.
Great.
Is there anything else, or should we
I
close it out?
I think we're good. Thank you so much, Amy. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.